These 9 people secretly run your life. These 9 control how much money you have, where you live, what you think, where you work, how you move around, what you consume, and even how long you live for. So I'll show you how every choice you think you make every single day is just an illusion, because the outcome has already been decided by these 9 people. Like, you think the amount of money you have is just because of your hard work, and you're not watching YouTube videos, of course. But what if I told you, whatever the amount may be, it will never be decided by you, but by Jerome Powell. He's the head of the Federal Reserve, so pretty much your Wallace stepdad. Think about this. 2020, if you lived in Venezuela, you could have had $100 in local currency. It's about $10. But in less than 1 year, that $100 is worth less than a penny. Just because the Fed decided to print some money for themselves. So instead, you decide to make some turtles out of it and sell them on Etsy. Same exact premise applies here with Jerome in the US, because he decides how much money to print each year. But it's much worse than that. Because of history, the world trades in US dollars, which means when the dollar falls, the world economy crashes. And just like you overestimate your ability to drink and underestimate your ability to drive, the Fed, who's in charge of deciding how much money to print, tends to overestimate a bit more than underestimate. This is the most important equation you've never heard of. And this part right here is decided by Jerome Powell. Because of this one small miscalculation, the Fed way overestimated the economic growth that's going to follow after lockdown. So they printed way too much money to accommodate that, which is the reason the value of your money has been going down so rapidly these last few years. So now, McChicken is like $3. So why are more people talking about the reinstatement of the most powerful government position? It comes down to these 3 people. Think about what you see on a daily basis. The average American tends to spend 7 hours every single day looking at a screen, and Sergey Brin and Mark Zuckerberg decide what you see on that screen.
Like, oh no, okay, hold on there. Let me take out my phone.
New face filters on Instagram today. This is my favorite one so far.
Sundar is Google's, Alphabet's CEO, but Larry Page and Sergey Brin own 51% of the controlling voting shares of the company. With Larry taking a back seat due to his stance on monopolies, Sergey actually decided to come back and help manage the company when the AI boom occurred.
It uses AI to bring AI.
We know how powerful these companies are. Alphabet's been paying Apple billions of dollars to continue their monopoly, all while being sued by the government for it. That's why Larry and Sergey stepped down in the first place, so they couldn't get legally blamed for it, but they could still pull the strings in the background. So while Sergey controls and filters the information you get on search, like this YouTube video, or where porn sites pop up, Zuckerberg controls who you talk and interact with. The top 3 most visited sites and the top 6 most used apps in the United States. They collect your data, use it in their algorithm to show you the content that you might like and enjoy, but also have the power to push any narrative that they want. And since it's a business, it's obviously all about profits, and negative information always gets way more engagement, so why would they ever want to influence you in a positive way? To the extremes, we've seen this with Facebook causing genocides in Myanmar, or Sergey displaying some political bias in some of his speeches. It doesn't even matter what your opinion is. As long as the site keeps you on it longer, that's all it's going to keep pushing for you. So all it's going to really do is just reinforce that bias you already have, therefore shaping your opinion and not exposing you to other ways of thinking. And when you're on the site longer, it might have some time to push some narratives that might be useful to itself. That's the main reason that TikTok is probably going to get banned in the US, is that no American, whether politician or a member of a board, can influence what content gets pushed on the platform. And they decide exactly what type of filter to implement, kind of like not showing Winnie the Pooh. I mean, the glorious supreme leader of the Communist Republic of China. You see, he indirectly controls TikTok. On paper, it's in Singapore, but not really. But it is the 4th most used social media app in the world. But he also controls how much you pay for most of your things. Around 30 to 40% of everything that you buy in the US was in one time or another assisted by China. Whether that be making the thing, shipping the thing, manufacturing the thing. Some products that are even made in the US get shipped over to China and then shipped back just because it's cheaper to sell. Since it's a one-party rule that's not very capitalistic, if something like a war with Taiwan breaks out over the world's monopoly of microchip and the US supports them, she can just make 40% of everything in the US disappear. That even includes the legendary Nike donkeys. But who exactly controls what you decide to buy? Monopolies as big as Amazon or Apple in their markets. In the world's richest economy, difficult for one person to run all of it. But the one that has the most influence is by far Larry Fink. He is the guy she told you not to worry about. He's the founder and CEO of the world's largest asset manager, BlackRock. Its AUM is bigger than every single country's GDP except US and China. And it tends to be the majority shareholder in most US companies. So he has the power to single-handedly cause a recession and decides to push a single agenda across several industries at a time. Whether that be deciding to take away the development of artificial intelligence from the people. OpenAI used to stand for open source, by the way. Or deciding what type of food is being promoted by controlling restaurant chains, grocery stores, industries. Rest in peace, Red Lobster. You might think it's crazy that someone has the power to control your daily diet, but you can only eat what you can find. Food in the US is an oligopoly, just like everything else. 81% of all US citizens cook their food at home, and these stores account for over 2/3 of where people buy their groceries. BlackRock is their biggest shareholder, and if you forgot, Larry Fink is BlackRock's CEO. This mass ownership is hidden very well though, but doesn't Uncle Sam have anything to say about this? You'd think the USDA would step in, but the leading food group that's being consumed is dairy, which has the highest lobbying power in the US, and is still being subsidized by the government, even though the research doesn't even back its properties. This is also the reason these Chick-fil-A cows on the billboards are out of order. But first, let's figure out how you even get to the store. If you're part of the 92% of US households that own a car, you're gonna need some gas. Oops, it looks like the Royal Prince of Saudi Arabia decided to raise oil prices again. You see, OPEC controls 80% of the world's oil reserves. It's a legal cartel of oil-rich countries that decide the price of oil by limiting the supply when they want to make more money. And Mohammed bin Salman is at its head, controlling the highest producing oil country in the world and OPEC's biggest member. So the price of gas is out of your hands, and all these powerful people might make you sick, so you might want to get medicated. You might as well know about Albert Bourla. He controls the prices of all prescription drugs in the US, and is the reason that insulin is $98 here and $12 in Canada. So the model is, if you have diabetes, pay $98 or die. Is the head of pharmaceutical research and manufacturers of America. Pretty much the association of Big Pharma, and is also the biggest lobbyist in US history. Oh, and by the way, he's also the head of Pfizer. So he makes sure US politicians don't do anything nice to keep drug prices down, make sure they tell everyone to get their shot, maybe even ask for some tax money in subsidies. But at least sometimes they offer some cool prizes, like you get a shot, you can get a ticket to a heavily attended sporting event. After you overpay your prescriptions, head back over to your home, which you're probably renting since it's impossible to afford a home these days. So don't worry, Stephen A. Schwarzman from the Blackstone Group will make sure your rent is... They own a company called Invitation Homes, which can currently house an entire country of isolate. And seeing how a certain buyer has destroyed the housing market and younger generations preferring to rent because of it, institutional investors like this one are projected to control 40% of US single-family rental homes by 2030. It's getting so bad that even the government acknowledged how Blackstone and some of its own companies are targeting areas to increase rent prices. But that's not all that Blackstone does. There's a high chance that Stephen controls your job future too. Like if the company you're working for is private and isn't publicly owned by Larry, there's a high chance it's completely owned by private equity or can be bought up by private equity, which only has a single purpose: buy, raise value, sell. Since Blackstone is the biggest private equity firm by a wide margin, Stephen will probably be the one responsible for the size of your paycheck and whether you get laid off to cut costs. But how do you even get that job in the first place? Ever heard of ESG? And decides whether you're the right fit for a job without looking at your credentials. Purpose is to make companies more environmentally healthy and diverse, but in reality, it's the opposite. George Soros, the guy who calls himself God, helped introduce it with the UN in the early 2000s, by giving each company a score to strive for. But the criteria is so vague, some of the highest scores out there are of oil, cigarette, and sweatshop companies. Yes, same companies that steal your data, pollute the earth, drive up drug prices, and use sweatshops. How? Well, they use the system to decrease opportunity by limiting non-diverse folk in progressive countries like the US, while not pushing for new opportunities for diverse folk like LGBT in the Middle East and Eastern Europe. So this naughty nine control your life and your day, where your money's worth, how your opinions are formed, where you consume, where you work, where you pay for necessities, and where you live. This video is super simplified. In reality, your life is just run by a few private funds filled with PE and VC companies, run by a few powerful plans. But that's a 14-season series I do not have the legal team for, so you're just gonna have to deal with it.